Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to some more StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void. Wait, what? They did actually just now announce the launch date of the closed beta of Legacy of the Void, and that's actually gonna be March 31st. So that's just in about a week and a half of me uploading this video. So there's actually a lot of things to discuss. So in this video, I'm going to first go over all of the unit changes, and then we will go over the actual, the general switches that they actually made. So definitely stick around to the ending because there's a lot of awesome things that will change the game up a lot. But first, let's have a look at what they wrote down right here at the opening of this post. The beta is near. The StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void beta is on the way, and with only 2 weeks left until its launch, we wanted to take a look at the goals and expectations around the multiplayer beta. As you are likely aware, we've been trying to be as open as possible with the status of development, and strongly believe that the increased cooperation between developers and players is beneficial to StarCraft 2. I would definitely agree with that. To be clear, our goal for the expansion is to work together with all of you to make Legacy of the Void as awesome as possible. So they made a bunch of other changes right here, but those are not that big of a deal. Let's have a look at the units. So they're making both changes to existing units as well as units that are being added to the actual game. And the very first one that we had never heard of before, at least I didn't, is going to be the Protoss Adept. The Adept is a core gateway unit with a ground-only ranged attack and normal movement speed. The unit utilizes its psionic transfer ability to teleport to nearby locations. It sends out a copy of the Adept that is controlled independently but cannot attack or be attacked. After a fixed duration, the Adept will teleport to the location of the copy as it expires. This is a new unit that we feel rather confident about. We'd like the unit to serve as a core unit option. This means that the unit will be able to perform some of the previous roles filled by the Zealot or Stalkers, and in some cases do it better. So this is going to be a new gateway unit that is actually pretty exciting. I have not played with this one yet because it's not playable anywhere yet. It's not like it's added to the unit test map or anything like that. But this is actually a really cool idea. I really like the idea of having some early game aggression with a unit that can both attack and actually move at the same time. Because obviously what's going on is that you can actually attack with the unit while the actual teleportation thing is going on. So I'm very excited to see how this is going to be a part of the game. It's going to be a little bit tricky though. I don't know exactly how it's going to be later on into the game and if you can really mess these guys out. I feel like in most situations you are going to simply be better for sniping down medevacs with Stalkers and for dealing damage with Zealots. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the Adept will indeed be a core gateway unit. But as of right now, it seems to be more of like an harassment early game sort of unit that will definitely have its uses in the mid game, but later on will likely fall off. The second unit for Protoss is going to be the Disruptor, and many of you will already be aware of that, but if you aren't, the Disruptor is a light mechanical unit from the robotics facility whose ability Purification Nova can deal a massive burst of AoE splash damage if an opponent does not counter micro. The Disruptor is extremely potent versus any force that clumps its units together, as well as against worker lines. Once activated, the Disruptor becomes invulnerable and gains increased movement speed, and after 4 seconds the Disruptor emits a massive blast dealing AoE damage in a circle and immediately becomes vulnerable again, also losing its speed boost. Now, I've been quite vocal in the past about this unit. I am not the biggest fan of it. I don't know. I feel like in most situations where I make a Disruptor, because it's at the same tech level as the Colossus, I would rather make a Colossus. The Disruptor, it definitely does have its uses, but it's very expensive, and it only really works if your opponent isn't paying attention or, if your opponent messes up. I would probably not really enjoy seeing this unit in the actual game, but maybe I'm wrong, and there will be people that will show some amazing micro with this one, but I'm not the biggest fan of it as it stands right now. Other than that, there are also a bunch of general changes to the Protoss units. The warping mechanic has been changed so units will actually take increased damage while warping in. The warp prism can now actually drop at a little bit of a range. Immortals get an activated ability called Barrier. Oracles will now be able to actually have 2 of their abilities merged right now, so it's going to be Revelation rather and Envision. And they also get a new ability called Stasis Ward, which is basically a sort of mine that you lay down that slows units down when they are trying to move out, basically delaying certain timing attacks and whatnot, which is pretty cool. And then we got the Tempest, which is a new ability called Disintegration, which you can use to basically force engagements later on into the game. And last but not least, you have Carriers. They can now activate Release Interceptions to permanently launch all interceptions at target locations, which basically means that, once again, they are going to be like harassment-based units. So, all in all, they're making Protoss a little bit more mobile, a little bit more aggressive, and that is something that I feel like is going to be very crucial, because obviously with the mineral changes that we take a look at in a second, this is going to be crucial because they're gonna have to deal some damage in order to actually stay in the game. So all in all, pretty cool changes for Protoss, except for maybe Disruptor, which I find a little bit meh. Next up, we have the Terran units. Now, recently they actually removed the Herc, which is one of the units that they meant to be adding, but they removed it. So as it stands right now, they're only getting one unit, but it does say that we are in the process of exploring a second unit for Terran. But the one that did get added is going to be the Cyclone. The Cyclone is a factory unit which can lock onto a target, then deal massive damage over time while on the move. So this is going to be great for like Ultralisk Thors, all these sort of units. Using the Cyclone to its full potential and reacting to it well are both heavily dependent on micro. So once again, a micro focus unit. Other than that, they made a bunch of other changes as well. The Battle Cruiser can now do tactical jump, basically allowing it to teleport anywhere across the map at any given time. It is going to be a high energy cost, so you know, it's going to be a little bit interesting how often this will really come into play. And they also now allow the siege tank to be droppable. And this is probably something that a lot of people overlook, but I feel like this is going to be one of the major changes to the game, because it basically makes it a reefer from Brood War. And obviously what happens is that if you do some medevac harassment with siege tanks, you can deal a ridiculous amount of damage if your opponent does not have, like, you know, proper defense versus that. Like if you don't have any mutas or any solid anti-air, I mean, a queen or two is not going to cut it, because the siege tank will simply just take him out. So this is going to be really interesting how this one is going to play out, and I honestly think that is the most exciting change as of right now. And then last but not least, we got the Zerg Changes. We also got 2 new units. Yay! We got the Lurker, which most of you will be aware of from Brood War, I am assuming. The Lurker has returned. The Lurker is a tier 2 unit which morphs from a Hydralisk, and it deals line-based splash damage, but only can attack while burrowed. The Lurker has an available tier 3 upgrade, which substantially increases its attack range. This unit is insanely good against taking out bio, against taking out gateway units, against pretty much everything. So I don't really know if they are in like the most amazing position right now. They seem extremely powerful. And, you know, I really like him. I mean, I'm a Zerg player by heart, so, you know, I really like him. One thing I've noticed about the Lurker is that their movement speed is incredibly fast as well. So most often, or more often than not, you can actually just burrow them, deal damage, and then run away again. And there's very little that can actually catch up to you. So it's going to be interesting how this one does turn out. The unit is very expensive, though, so you know, we'll see how it comes into play. The second unit that is being added for Zerg is going to be the Ravager, and the Ravager is one of these units that a lot of people are a little bit hesitant about already. They're already calling it like Legacy of the Ravager and whatnot. The Ravager is a new unit which morphs and whatnot. The Ravager and the Roach, its effectiveness heavily relies on player micro due to its activated ability called Corrosive Bile. Corrosive Bile is a mortar-style area of attack skill shot, which, once fired, impacts after a short delay. The ability can hit both air and ground units and also will destroy any force fields it comes in contact with. So basically the Ravager is going to be a Roach on crack, as I like to call it. It's basically just an improved version of the Roach. It is very, very expensive though. Like to get a Ravager out, you need to pay 100 minerals and 100 gas. So it's practically the cost of a Mutalisk. And on top of that, they are very supply hungry as well. But this unit is insanely good. You can literally, like right now, as it stands right now, you can literally contain a Protoss player like on 2 bases with like 3-4 Ravagers as it stands right now. So it's pretty powerful already. What I mostly like about the Zerg Changes is that it sort of like gives you a level in between the current tiers. So right now, for example, you go for, you know, the hatchery tech, and then you go up to a lair, and then you go up to a hive eventually. But right now, these units are sort of like the mix in between. I would sort of consider a Ravager to be like tier 1.5 unit and the Lurker like a 2.5 unit, because they sort of like allow you to transfer towards the second tier or the third tier very, very easily and very, very, in like a very good manner. Like, you're still very powerful. Right now, as it stands right now in StarCraft 2, you are pretty vulnerable in between those tech switches until the lair finishes or until the hive finishes. But these units seem to fix that quite well, and I really, really like that idea. Last but not least, there are also a bunch of changes to the existing units. There's going to be the Corruptor. They now get a new ability called Caustic Spray, and Caustic Spray is a channeled ability which deals damage over time to a target or a unit, which is pretty cool. And then we have the Swarmmost, which is actually a unit that is gonna go live very soon in Heart of the Swarm as well. This is going to be a completely changed unit. They may as well change the entire model and the name of it as well, because it has nothing like the old Swarmmost does. But right now it will have a spawn locust ability that allows you to cast it while unburrowed, and the cooldown of it is much longer. And on top of that, the actual locust can now also fly if you upgrade that, so that's pretty cool. And then we have the Nidus Worm. To enhance the diversity and strength of harass options for Zerg, the Nidus Worm can no longer take damage until it is finished unburrowing. a main effect of this change is that workers will no longer be able to be a viable defense versus Nidus Worm. So as it is right now, you can basically just box all of your workers in the main base, for example, right click on the actual, building Nidus Worm and to actually take it out before any kind of units can spawn out of it. This is actually going to be a massive change as well, because, maybe some Ravager timing attacks off of 2 bases with a Nidus Worm, they will be extremely powerful, especially considering you will be able to deploy a second one right after your first one finishes spawning. So, while you may be able to only get a couple units out of the first Nidus Worm, the second Nidus Worm may be a lot more efficient. So that's going to be pretty cool to see how that comes out into play. Then there are also some general changes to the game that are actually very exciting as well. I can't really show you very much of this, but basically what they did, there is resource changes. So right now, instead of having 1500 minerals on every single mineral patch, it's going to be half of them will be having 750 minerals and the other half will be having 1500. Now that basically forces you to expand incredibly quickly, especially because change number 2 right here as well. You'll notice that the starter worker count is being increased to 12. So you will mine out your main base and your natural so much faster than you're used to, which means that by the 10-minute mark, you're going to be forced to start expanding towards a third already, because the main is gonna, start mining out very rapidly. And these 2 changes are actually very cool. It forces you to be more mobile, and if you are a turtling kind of player that likes sitting back with a lot of siege tanks or just likes building up a huge army, you're going to be forced to be out more on the map, because you simply cannot do that. You will simply run out of resources. We also have the unit scan range change, and this is a bit of a weird one. The easiest way I can explain it is that ranged units are now a little bit smarter. So what happens is, right now, for example, if you're attacking stalkers into widow mines, sometimes the widow mines will attack the stalkers somehow, and somehow they will be able to be in range, but other times they aren't. This is going to be making that more consistent. So the ranged unit will actually sort of like attack the outer layer, I suppose, of the widow mine and never be in range of it. Now, obviously, this is going to be a pretty interesting change that may not be very significant, but it is going to be making ranged units especially, such as like the Ravager, such as like the Roach, such as like the Marine, and all those sort of things, a little bit more reliable, which is going to be pretty cool. And then the final changes is going to be clock based. I know, right? This is kind of strange, but as it is right now in StarCraft, the real-time clock is actually different from the in-game clock. So right now, for example, I believe like 5 seconds in-game in StarCraft is like 3.5 of like real-time seconds, and they are changing that up. Now that does mean at the same time that they're also going to be forcing everyone to basically learn new timings in their head, because for example, as it is right now, 5 minutes 36 supply, which is a good counter for Zerg, you really won't be able to do that anymore. Now, obviously, since the starter workers are changing, and since the entire game is changing, this is going to not be that big of a deal. It just means that you're gonna have to relearn the game from the ground up, which I personally actually kind of like. And that is pretty much it as far as all the changes to Legacy of the Void goes. Let me know right below that like button in the comment section what your favorite changes are. I am pretty excited for the Ravager and Lurker myself, and to obviously just see the new economy changes with the, quicker mining out bases as well as the actual worker count changed. I think that is going to be crazy, and I think it's going to be extremely fun because the general games will just take a little bit shorter, which means we can grind more and improve faster. Anyways, I want to thank you guys all for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!